Thank you for staying with me through this journey. I hope it's been as meaningful for you as it has been for me. But first, let me hit you with a shocking fact. Loneliness isn't just an emotional state, it's a biological one. Studies show that loneliness can impact your immune system, disrupt your sleep, and even increase your risk of heart disease and early mortality. Think about that for a second. Feeling lonely isn't just a fleeting emotion, it's as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So, if you've been brushing it off, thinking, "I'll get over it," this is your wake-up call. Let me share a story. Imagine this. There's a man, let's call him Jake. Jake has over 10,000 followers on Instagram, gets hundreds of likes on his posts, and yet, every night, he sits alone in his apartment, feeling like no one truly knows him. He's surrounded by people digitally, but feels completely isolated in reality. Sound familiar? Maybe Jake is you or someone you know. Here's the kicker: Jake didn't even realize he was lonely because he was so distracted by the noise of social media. It wasn't until he started waking up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, tears in his eyes, that he began to question, is this all there is? Here's the truth: loneliness isn't about the number of people around you, it's about the quality of your connections. And if you've ever felt like Jake, I want you to stay with me, because we're about to dive into the psychology of loneliness and how you can reclaim control over your life. Now, let's get practical. Did you know that one of the biggest factors in loneliness is how you perceive it? This brings us to our first trick: cognitive reframing. This is where you take your negative thoughts about loneliness and flip them on their head. Here's how it works. In a study led by psychologist Dr. Emily Falk, participants were asked to spend a week alone. At first, they reported feeling anxious, restless, and disconnected. But halfway through, they were taught to reframe their solitude as an opportunity for self-growth. Instead of thinking, "I'm alone because no one wants me," they learned to think, "I'm alone because I'm investing in myself." The result? Their feelings of loneliness dropped by 30%. That's the power of perspective. Click subscribe to this channel to get more insights into human psychology. Try this the next time you're sitting alone. Instead of scrolling Instagram or binge watching Netflix, take a moment to think about what you can do with that time. Maybe it's starting a journal, learning a new skill, or simply reflecting on your goals. Solitude isn't your enemy, it's your canvas. The question is, what will you paint on it? But let's take this deeper. Why does reframing work? It's because your brain is wired to seek patterns. When you tell yourself, "I'm alone because I'm a failure," your brain will look for evidence to support that belief. It's like a Google search. Type in, "Why am I a failure?" and your brain will give you a list of reasons. But if you type in, "What can I gain from this time alone?" your brain will shift its focus and start looking for opportunities. That's not just psychology, that's neuroscience. Now, let's talk about mindfulness and meditation, our second trick. You've probably heard about mindfulness before, but let me tell you why it's a game changer for loneliness. When you feel lonely, your brain goes into overdrive, activating something called the default mode network. This is the part of your brain responsible for daydreaming and self-reflection. Sounds harmless, right? But here's the catch: when you're lonely, this network becomes hyperactive, amplifying negative thoughts and making you feel even more isolated. Mindfulness interrupts this cycle. Here's a quick experiment you can try right now. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and focus on the sensation of your breath entering and leaving your body. As you do this, notice any thoughts that come up. Maybe it's a memory, a worry, or a feeling of loneliness. Instead of judging these thoughts or pushing them away, just observe them. Say to yourself, I see you, but you're not in control. This simple exercise, practiced daily, can rewire your brain to respond to loneliness with calmness instead of panic. In a groundbreaking study, researchers found that just 10 minutes of mindfulness a day reduced feelings of loneliness by 20% in participants over 4 weeks. Why? Because mindfulness teaches you to be present. And when you're present, you're not ruminating about the past or worrying about the future. You're just here, and at this moment you're okay. But let me ask you something. When was the last time you truly listened to your own thoughts? Not the ones screaming at you to check your phone, or the ones berating you for not being good enough, but the quiet ones, the ones that whisper your deepest fears and desires. If you can't remember, then mindfulness isn't just a trick, it's a lifeline. Now, let's shift gears to our third trick: social engagement strategies. This one's a bit counterintuitive because when you're feeling lonely, the last thing you want to do is put yourself out there. But here's the thing: loneliness creates a feedback loop. The lonelier you feel, the more you withdraw, and the more you withdraw, the lonelier you become. Breaking that loop requires action, even if it feels uncomfortable. Start small. Reach out to someone you haven't spoken to in a while, a friend, a family member, even an old colleague. Send them a simple message: "Hey, I was just thinking about you. How have you been?" You might be surprised at how many people are eager to reconnect but were too afraid to make the first move. And don't just stop there. Look for opportunities to engage with your community. Join a local club, attend a workshop, or even volunteer. Studies show that volunteering not only reduces loneliness but also increases happiness by up to 30%. Why? Because helping others gives you a sense of purpose and reminds you that you're part of something bigger than yourself. Let me share another story. There's a woman named Lisa. Lisa had just moved to a new city for work and didn't know a single person. Every day she'd come home from the office, sit on her couch and cry. One day she decided to join a book club. She was terrified. What if no one liked her? What if she said something stupid? But you know what happened? She met people who shared her love of literature, people who made her feel seen and heard. That one decision changed her life. So, here's my challenge to you. What's one small step you can take today to engage with someone? Maybe it's texting a friend, joining a class, or even starting a conversation with a stranger. Remember, loneliness isn't a life sentence. It's a signal. And like any signal, it's trying to tell you something. The question is, are you ready to listen? Now that we've explored the first 3 tricks: cognitive reframing, mindfulness and meditation, and social engagement strategies, let's dive even deeper. Because loneliness isn't just an emotion, it's a layered experience, and to truly overcome it, we need to address it on multiple levels. The next trick we're going to talk about is journaling, and let me tell you, this one is much more powerful than you might think. When you're feeling lonely, your thoughts can feel like a tangled knot, messy, overwhelming, and impossible to sort out. Journaling is the psychological equivalent of untangling that knot. It's not just about writing your feelings down, it's about giving structure to the chaos in your mind, turning abstract emotions into concrete words. And when you do that, something incredible happens. You start to see patterns. You gain clarity. You realize that the loneliness you feel isn't some invincible monster, it's something you can understand and, more importantly, something you can manage. Let me share a fascinating psychological experiment. Researchers at the University of Texas conducted a study where participants were asked to write about their deepest thoughts and feelings for 15 minutes a day over 4 consecutive days. The results were astounding. Not only did participants report feeling less lonely, but they also showed improvements in their immune function, stress levels, and overall mental health. Why? Because the act of writing activates the rational, problem-solving part of your brain, allowing you to process emotions in a healthier way. Here's how you can start. Grab a notebook or open a blank document on your computer. Set a timer for 10 to 15 minutes. Then, start writing. Don't worry about grammar, spelling, or how it sounds, just let your thoughts flow. If you're not sure where to begin, try these prompts. What am I feeling right now? What's causing these feelings? What would I say to a friend who is feeling this way? These questions act as a bridge between your emotions and your logical mind, helping you make sense of what you're experiencing. But journaling isn't just about venting, it's also about self-discovery. For example, you might notice that your loneliness tends to spike at certain times of day or in specific situations. Maybe it's when you're scrolling through social media or when you see couples out on a date. These insights are gold because they give you the power to change your habits and environment. If social media makes you feel lonely, take a break from it. If evenings are the hardest, plan something to look forward to, like a phone call with a friend or a relaxing hobby. And here's a pro tip: don't just write about the negative. Use your journal to reflect on the positive moments in your day, no matter how small. Did someone smile at you? Did you accomplish a task you've been procrastinating on? Write it down. Over time, this practice trains your brain to focus on the good, which can help counteract the negative spiral of loneliness. Now, let's talk about the fifth and final trick: volunteering. This one is a game changer because it flips the script on loneliness entirely. When you're feeling lonely, the natural instinct is to turn inward, to focus on your own pain. But volunteering forces you to do the opposite. It shifts your focus outward, onto others. And in doing so, it creates a sense of connection and purpose that can be incredibly healing. Here's a story that illustrates this perfectly. There's a man named Marcus. Marcus had just gone through a divorce and was struggling with intense loneliness. He felt like no one understood him, like he was invisible. One day, on a whim, he decided to volunteer at a local food bank. At first, he thought it would just be a way to kill time. But as he started interacting with the people there, both the volunteers and the families they were helping, something shifted. He realized that his pain wasn't unique, that everyone was carrying their own struggles. And by helping others, he felt a sense of purpose that made his own loneliness feel smaller, more manageable. The psychology behind this is fascinating. When you help others, your brain releases oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone. This is the same hormone that strengthens connections between mothers and their newborns. It's nature's way of rewarding social behavior, and it's incredibly effective at combating feelings of isolation. Volunteering also activates the brain's reward system, flooding you with dopamine and serotonin chemicals that boost your mood and make you feel good. But volunteering isn't just about the biological benefits, it's also about the relationships you build. When you volunteer, you're surrounded by people who share your values, people who are working toward the same goal. These shared experiences create a sense of camaraderie and belonging that can be hard to find elsewhere. And the best part, it doesn't have to be a big commitment. Even an hour a week can make a difference, not just for the people you're helping, but for you. If you're not sure where to start, think about what you're passionate about. Love animals? Volunteer at a shelter? Care about the environment? Join a local cleanup crew? Want to make a difference in someone's life? Mentor a student or visit a senior center? The possibilities are endless, and with the rise of online volunteering opportunities, you can even contribute from the comfort of your home. Now, let's tie all of this together. These 5 tricks: cognitive reframing, mindfulness, social engagement, journaling, and volunteering aren't just random tips. They're rooted in decades of psychological research, and when used together, they create a powerful toolkit for overcoming loneliness. Think of it like this: cognitive reframing helps you change your mindset. Mindfulness teaches you to be present. Social engagement gets you out of your shell. Journaling gives you clarity. And volunteering connects you to something bigger than yourself. Each one addresses a different aspect of loneliness, and together they form a holistic approach that can transform your life. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a question: what's one small step you can take today to start implementing these tricks? Maybe it's reframing a negative thought, practicing mindfulness for 5 minutes, reaching out to an old friend, writing in a journal, or looking up volunteer opportunities. Whatever it is, commit to it. Because the truth is, loneliness doesn't have to define you. It's a challenge, yes, but it's also an opportunity, a chance to grow, to connect, and to rediscover yourself. By now, we've explored 5 transformative psychological tricks that can help you overcome loneliness: cognitive reframing, mindfulness, social engagement, journaling, and volunteering. But here's the thing: knowing about these strategies is one thing. Actually applying them, living them, and feeling their impact is another. So let's dig even deeper, because understanding the psychology behind loneliness and how to fight it isn't just about tricks, it's about reshaping how you see yourself, others, and the world around you. Let's start by addressing something critical. Loneliness isn't just a personal issue, it's a societal one. We live in a world that's more connected than ever, yet people are feeling lonelier than ever before. Why is that? A big part of it comes down to how our modern lives are structured. Think about it. Technology gives us the illusion of connection. You can send a text, like a post, or join a group chat, but these interactions often lack depth. They're surface level, and while they might distract you from loneliness temporarily, they don't satisfy your deeper need for meaningful connection. This is why so many people can be surrounded by friends, co-workers, or followers, and still feel utterly alone. It's not about how many connections you have, it's about how real they are. This brings us to a vital insight: the quality of your relationships matters far more than the quantity. And that's not just a nice idea, it's backed by science. The Harvard study of adult development, one of the longest-running studies on human happiness, found that the single strongest predictor of happiness and health wasn't money, fame, or success, it was the quality of people's close relationships. Let that sink in for a moment. It's not about having dozens of friends, it's about having a few people you can truly rely on, people who see you, understand you, and care about you. So, how do you build these kinds of relationships? It starts with vulnerability, and I know that word can be scary. No one wants to feel exposed to risk rejection, but vulnerability is the foundation of true connection. When you open up to someone, when you share your fears, your dreams, your struggles, you give them permission to do the same. It's a two-way street, and while it might feel uncomfortable at first, the rewards are worth it. Let me share a psychological experiment to illustrate this. Researchers Arthur Aaron and Elaine Aaron developed a method called the 36 questions to help strangers form close bonds quickly. In this experiment, participants were paired up and asked to answer a series of increasingly personal questions, like what's your greatest fear or what's a memory that means a lot to you. By the end of the experiment, many participants reported feeling deeply connected to their partner even though they had just met. Some even described it as a soulmate-like experience. The takeaway here is powerful intimacy doesn't take years to build. It just takes courage and openness. So here's a challenge for you. The next time you're with someone you trust, try being just a little more vulnerable. Share something personal, maybe a challenge you're facing or a goal you're working toward, and notice how they respond. Chances are, they'll open up in return, and that exchange will bring you closer. But let's take this even further. What if you don't have close relationships right now? What if you feel like there's no one you can be vulnerable with? This is where self-compassion comes in. One of the cruelest tricks loneliness plays is convincing you that you're unworthy of connection, that there's something wrong with you. This couldn't be further from the truth. Loneliness doesn't mean you're broken, it means you're human. And the first step to breaking free from it is learning to be kind to yourself. Dr. Christine Neff, a leading researcher on self-compassion, explains that self-compassion is about treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you'd offer a close friend. When you're feeling lonely, instead of beating yourself up or spiraling into self-criticism, try saying to yourself, "It's okay to feel this way. Everyone feels lonely sometimes. This doesn't define me, and it will pass." It might feel awkward at first, but research shows that self-compassion can reduce feelings of isolation and help you build emotional resilience. Let me give you a practical exercise to try. It's called the self-compassion letter. Think about a situation where you've been struggling with loneliness. Now, imagine that a dear friend of yours is going through the same thing. What would you say to comfort and encourage them? Write those words down and then read them back to yourself. This might sound simple, but it's incredibly powerful. By reframing your inner dialogue, you can start to replace self-criticism with self-acceptance. Now, let's circle back to the idea of connection, but this time, let's think about it in a broader sense. Humans are social creatures, yes, but we're also deeply connected to the world around us. And sometimes, combating loneliness isn't just about connecting with people, it's about connecting with nature, art, spirituality, or something larger than yourself. Take nature, for example. Have you ever noticed how spending time in a forest, by the ocean, or even in a park can make you feel more grounded and at peace? That's not just in your head, it's a well-documented phenomenon. Studies show that spending time in nature can lower levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, and increase feelings of well-being. Why? Because nature reminds us that we're part of something bigger. It pulls us out of our heads and into the present moment. If you're feeling lonely, try this. Go for a walk in a natural setting. Leave your phone behind or put it on airplane mode. Pay attention to the sights, sounds, and smells around you. Notice the rustle of the leaves, the chirping of the birds, the feeling of the sun or wind on your skin. This isn't just about distraction, it's about connection to the world that exists beyond your thoughts and feelings. And if nature isn't accessible to you, consider connecting with something else that gives you a sense of meaning. Maybe it's listening to music that moves you, watching a film that inspires you, or even meditating on the idea that you're part of an interconnected universe. These experiences can remind you that loneliness, while painful, is only a small part of your larger story. Finally, let's talk about the idea of action. One of the most paralyzing effects of loneliness is that it makes you feel stuck, like you're trapped in quicksand. But here's the secret: the antidote to loneliness isn't waiting for someone else to pull you out, it's taking small, intentional steps forward. Every time you reach out to someone, practice mindfulness, write in your journal, or volunteer your time, You're sending a message to yourself: I'm not powerless. I can change this. And yes, it's going to feel hard at first. Change always does, but every small step you take creates momentum, and that momentum builds over time. So, let me leave you with one final question. What's one thing you can do today, right now, that your future self will thank you for? Maybe it's texting a friend, going for a walk, or simply sitting with your feelings instead of running from them. Whatever it is, start small, but start. Because loneliness doesn't have to be your story. It's just a chapter, and you have the power to write the next one. Now, go out there and take that first step. You've got this.